In my case, is actually very similar with a receiver finally getting a bit more of layup looks, in my opinion, is how I see this going. That's Calvin Ridley going right now as the wide receiver 36, 64.1 overall. And yet in his career, wide receiver 20, 27, 5, and 20 in his 4 seasons. So getting drafted 16 spots where he typically below where he typically finishes. And I think we could actually see usage that mimics much more closely to that wide receiver 5 finish when he was in Atlanta, getting peppered and getting moved all over the place. Why? Well, he moves over to Tennessee, huge contract, whether you think it's deserved or not. Either way, the team invested mega dollars in this guy because they see him as that true wide receiver 1 alpha. They said that's what Ridley cited as the reason he ended up choosing the Tennessee Titans, because they promised him this role where they will move him all over. And right after they get signed, that's exactly what Brian Callahan says. And let's just talk about the overall offensive environment under Callahan, why I think that's going to be a huge boost for everyone in here, why I'm buying all Titans passing game. I love D-Hop at his price. I think Will Levis, if you watched our value show, that was my quarterback choice for best QB value right now in fantasy, because Mike Vrabel's gone, and for all his traits, exceptional qualities as a defensive-minded guy, hard-nosed coach, I love the guy, but for fantasy, it was not fun. Will Levis never topped 23 pass attempts. He was below 20 in 7 of his 9 games as a starter. And Vrabel, that's just very consistent, bottom 3 in pass attempts in 5 of his 6 seasons calling plays. Meanwhile, Callahan with the Bengals, top in 3 wide receiver sets, top 7 in pass attempts in 3 of 5 years, and in Burr's 2 healthy seasons, top 7 in passing yards and passing touchdowns, with Callahan calling the plays alongside Zach Taylor there. We also had, he's worked Callahan with Stafford, with Peyton Manning, and of course Joe Burrow. So he's got this track record of really efficient high-end passing games. And of course, the big difference there is this is Will Levis, not 3 of the most elite quarterbacks. But if Will Levis is ever going to evolve into something like that, this is the right guy to be coaching him. And I do think he's got those traits. You saw the flashes of the arms. The first game, he had 30 fantasy points when he first stepped onto the field on Thursday Night Football. So I really do think this offense is a great buy low passing attack. And I think Calvin Ridley is going to be the main vein of it. They talked about Callahan. As soon as they signed Ridley, being able to move Calvin around is going to be exciting. I think it's a good group that has some flexibility, particularly with Calvin. I think he's played all over the formation. That's exciting to me. You're looking very similar, as Callahan continued, to a role of what Jamar Chase played in terms of the ability to move around the formation, use him in motion. He's got such a unique skill set, great quickness, great speed. He can run all the routes. He can win inside. He can win outside. He's got a lot of different things he can do well. And I get it. I'm not saying that a Jamar Chase role means Jamar Chase productions. I'm not saying Calvin Ridley is even close to Jamar Chase, but he is a damn good receiver that can get it done, especially when he's getting used properly. Last year with the Jags, again, wide receiver 20 on very subpar usage, was lined up outside on 88% of the snaps on the line of scrimmage for 80% of those. And he really struggled against the press. That he had only a 66% success rate against the press, but also had above 80% win rate on man, right around 80% win rate on zone, was well above average on winning other than against the press. And this is why moving him around is going to be so beneficial here. This is exactly how he was used again when he was with the Falcons, wide receiver 5 season. And again, even with that subpar usage, top 10 in over 20 fantasy points, and 35% of his games had multiple 30-point days as well. So he had those huge blows, but I think just mixing in a few more of those layup style targets is going to be huge for Calvin Ridley. All the results so far since he arrived there in OTAs, I get it. You're playing without pads on, you're running against air, but all the results so far are he is moving all over the place. He looked explosive coming off the line of scrimmage, caught the ball with ease, and once he was warmed up, love the quote of Ridley was a reception vacuum. Nothing better than reception vacuums in fantasy football. But just again, that similar to your Chris Godwin argument, more ideal usage with those layup style rolls, moved all over the place. He is dangerous. He's so fast. I'm just picturing getting deep out of the slot, more yak opportunities. Everything is, to me, a buy in this Titans passing game, and none more so than Calvin Ridley at that kind of round 5-6 turn. Market-wise, it's kind of that spot where I'd like to have my 4th wide receiver by the end of round 6, and Calvin Ridley's the perfect wide receiver to have in that wide receiver 4 role that can any given week get you those 30-point upsides, and I do think it's going to steady out this year. He really reminds me of what Mike Evans did. He's 29, but says he's like 25 in this season. It really reminds me of why Mike Evans blew up last year. A new quarterback, new kind of overall offensive system that really played to his strengths. going right in that same price range last year as Mike Evans. Wouldn't shock me at all if, just like Evans is going around 2 to 3 right now, wouldn't be surprised at all if Calvin Ridley next season is going in those first couple rounds of fantasy because he has a monster blow up, and Will Levis is even better than people thought. So I'm a big fan of Calvin Ridley.
With this draft pick, the question that I'm asking myself is, do I think DeAndre Hopkins is done? Do I think DeAndre Hopkins is bad? And for me, the answer is no. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is still good. So it's been harder for me to get to Ridley because one, he's sandwiched right in like those, not the absolute top tier, not the Neighbors and Harrison, but the secondary tier of rookie receivers. He's sandwiched in there right with Ladd, Rome, and Worthy. So it's hard for me to get to Ridley just because I can get Hopkins a round and a half later, because we're on the same page there that the Titans are the offense, like one of those offenses that I want to get to because I think that there might be overlooked and have the potential to absolutely blow up. But I am personally, I'm on board with Hopkins, and I can get him a round and a half later while still grabbing one of those upper tier rookies in a McConkey or a Worthy. So I'm not getting to him as often as I probably should be, but just like kind of, so I still like Ridley as a player. I'm not out on him, but just structurally and how I'm doing my drafts for the most part, if I'm looking to attack the Titans offense in a draft, I'm usually going Hopkins just because I can grab one of those high upside rookies while also getting a piece of the Titans offense that I think is going to be very relevant and can still earn targets and play a big role. So just like structurally, it's harder for me to get to Ridley, but I like the points that you make. And I think that I should probably mix him in more than I have been recently.
Yeah, and I'm getting tons of D-Hop too. I'm with you. I think he's a great price here. I just look at it. I know Joe Burrow was the facilitator of it, so this is not apples. It's not the same thing. We can't just draw this immediate line, but we did see T. Higgins and Jamar Chase consistently topping out at 140-ish targets there. And, of course, you'd want the one. You'd rather have Jamar Chase than T. Higgins, even though both of them would get there for you in fantasy. And that's kind of how I see this playing out, and maybe not. I certainly do like D-Hop. The thing I love doing, too, though, is let's say I do take Ridley round 6, D-Hop is there in round 7 there sitting for you, but I also love going right in that range too is Brian Thomas. You have that week 17 matchup between the Jags and the Titans. So whether you go Christian Kirk in round 5 and then D-Hop in round 7, I just love that game. It's a week 17 matchup. They also get Indy in week 16. So I see this offense cruising at the time you need them most, two good divisional matchups with point potential through the roof. So I really like that's kind of one of the reasons I do like Ridley is you get your piece of the Titans offense. Then you have an explosive rookie in Brian Thomas just going around later. You could get or Evan Ingram on the Jags as well if you need your tight end sitting there in that round. Either way, I just want pieces of this offense, and I do think Ridley is the highest upside guy, even though, again, I do like the fact that, yeah, I could get a piece of this offense a round and a half later, sure, with DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not ruling that out. Sometimes I take them both, but I ultimately love just getting that round 6 to 7 Jags and Titans stack there. Again, whether it's a tight end like Evan Ingram or we'll consider some other tight end. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.